Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan has made commitments to infrastructure spending in his medium-term budget speech. Government prioritizes infrastructure to promote economic growth. But financing from developed nations can be a challenge and create high risk for deficit and debt. But the BRICS nations, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, have developed a new development bank that aims to promote faster growth in these regions. Earlier, SABC News spoke to Cyril Prinsloo, who's a researcher at the South African Institute for International Affairs. We started by asking him to explain why there's a need to create the new development bank by BRICS.
They're looking to fund infrastructure projects in developing countries, right? So they started the bank about 18 months ago, and they're specifically looking to fund sustainable infrastructure projects. So these are projects that contribute to the economic growth of these countries, but equally take into account the environmental and social aspects specific to these developing countries.
What is the BRICS Bank going to bring to the game that's different or that's not already on offer?
I think the key thing that we have to remember about the new development bank as it currently stands, its 5 members are the BRICS countries, right? So what they're saying is that they understand the developing challenges of developing countries. Yeah. Being some of the key developing countries themselves. So they say they can better respond because they're more intimately connected, intimately aware with these challenges. And I think that's one of the key advantages of the new development bank.
Now, of course, last week the world changed. The world changes, it seems, a lot these days. Donald Trump was voted in as the next 45th American president. He immediately took to the podium and said, "I'm going to rebuild America. I'm going to come out and we're going to rebuild everything." How does that kind of focus and spend on infrastructure, do you think, how will that American focus, how will it reverberate in call it the BRICS world?
Look, infrastructure spending has been always used by governments in times of economic challenges to try and reinvigorate the economy, right? To pump money into the economy, to create demand, and that way to try and grow the economy again. In terms of BRICS, of course, we know 3 of the BRICS at least are facing key economic challenges. You know, China is doing relatively well, growing between 6 and 7% GDP. India, of course, the star performer in the group. So certainly they will use new development bank to try and fund infrastructure to reinvigorate their economy. As to the effects of a Trump presidency on the BRICS, I think, of course, we have to remember America being the biggest economy in the world. Anything that happens in the United States has an impact not only on the BRICS countries, but on almost every country globally.
What do you think BRICS, or how do you think BRICS will perform in a world where there's a perceived better relations between a guy like Trump and a Putin? Is that a massive positive for BRICS, or would that be a stretch on our part?
You know, I think it's too early to say at this moment. Trump will only move into the White House in January next year, and I think then at that point we should look at that. I think it's too soon to tell at the moment.
Now, tell us a little bit about the Global Economic Governance Africa program. They put out a recent report, and that report found out certain things about multilateral development banks, as in this case. What came out of that report?
Absolutely. I think from the outset, we looked at the New Development Bank. New Development Bank said they don't want to revolutionize infrastructure funding. The current model employed by the likes of the World Bank, the African Development Bank, has actually been fairly successful. What the New Development Bank is saying is that they want to make it more efficient. So our research looked at what are the key challenges African countries face in engaging with these traditional multilateral development banks. what we found, for example, is loan procedures. To get a loan approved can take up to sometimes 20 months. So, of course, that's one thing we identified that the new development bank should look to address.